What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react to an outside perspective on the United States war with Iran. So today, I really want to check out this video here by TLDR News, and this is talking about why the US can't afford to keep up this war with Iran. A conflict that we started, by the way, and this has been nothing but bad for us. Even as an American, that is obvious to me. Gas prices are way up. American military personnel are being killed, and lots of other things that have. It's just been a disaster, frankly. So I actually think it would be very, very valuable to hear this European analysis of our war with Iran and what the US is doing, to get an outside perspective, an outside point of view on everything that we're doing. So, let's take a look.
On Tuesday, the US struck something like 80 targets in Iran and reapplied sanctions on Iranian oil exports, apparently in reaction to Iran attacking 3 oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, I mean, week after week after week, you hear about this happening. The United States, Donald Trump, even desperately trying to create some kind of peace agreement between us and Iran to clear up all these problems in the Strait of Hormuz so that oil can get out and you you can tell that Donald Trump is desperate for this to end because if you saw some of the deals that he was willing to make with Iran to like end this conflict, it was so bad for the US, so embarrassing for Trump. And he was willing to make those concessions to end this, but it just seems like something happens every time that it's close to ending. And this just, I don't know, maybe you can sense my frustration because also, just another Donald Trump, when he was campaigning, promised to his voters that he would never start another stupid, pointless war. And here we are.
In response, Iran launched a series of drone and missile attacks at US military sites across the region, including Salman Port in Bahrain and Ali Al Salem Air Base in Kuwait.
It's just sad to see, like, because there's been quite a few American military people who have died. And we are guilty of killing innocent, Iranian civilians. Like when we accidentally bombed like a little girl's school in Iran and killed like hundreds of little school children. It's yeah. So and I'm sure that a lot of our allies in the area that have US military bases are also extremely annoyed by all this cuz you're kind of getting dragged into this conflict that we started. It really feels like no other country, none of our allies want anything to do with this. And I don't blame you.
This represents by far the most serious breach of the ceasefire, and it sparked some anxiety that the war in Iran might be about to restart. Not least because, only last week, during an appearance on the Michael Knowles show, Vice President JD Vance seemed to imply that the US was only using the ceasefire to build back up its oil reserves.
So I think what the president has told us to do is use this MOU to sort of refill the world's oil economy, to refill some stocks, and then to see where the hand is.
I didn't see this interview. This really does make it seem like we had no intention of following through on the ceasefire. making we just wanted like a temporary ceasefire so that we could refill the oil and then just be that was the plan to keep this stupid war going. Are you kidding me?
So, in this video, we're going to explain why, tempting as it might be to Trump and co, the US can't actually afford to restart the war. At least, not yet.
Well, it's sort of mixed signals because there are clearly things that Trump and the US government want from Iran. I mean, this war was under the pretext of, oh, we have to stop them from having nuclear bombs. And now they don't even pretend that's the reason anymore here. But at the same time, I think Trump can see like his polling numbers going way, way, way down. Like how many Americans disapprove of Trump. He can see that. And he's actually worried and actually wants this to end. So it's mixed signals. Like even here in the United States, we're not exactly sure what our own government is trying to do anymore.
So let's get straight into it. In short, the reason that Trump can't afford to restart the war right now is that he is clearly very sensitive to oil prices, and the global oil market is more fragile than it looks. For context, over the past couple of months, the global oil market has proved remarkably resilient. Despite experiencing what Goldman Sachs described as the largest oil supply shock in history.
Yeah, so this is affecting other countries. Like as far as oil, energy, and prices, it sounds like this is affecting a lot of other countries, not just the United States. Because the Strait of Hormuz in Iran, that's like one of the biggest sources of oil in the world, right?
With global supply down at least 11 million barrels a day with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, oil prices basically hovered between $90 and $120 a barrel.
Is that resilient? Oil, the price of a barrel of oil is between 90 and 120? That sounds like a huge variation to me. Does that prove that it's resilient? Look how much it's spiked up. It seems pretty bad to me.
This was obviously well above pre-war levels, but most experts originally predicted that, if the strait was closed for a prolonged period of time, as it was, prices could shoot as high as $200 or even $300 a barrel.
Oh my god. I guess we're lucky that hasn't happened, but yeah, the Strait of Hormuz, that's been a disaster that we've created. And then the US is like doing this blockade where Iran is trying to control who passes through the Strait of Hormuz, and then the United States is not letting anyone pass through the blockade at the Strait of Hormuz. So, I'm guessing the rest of the world really wishes it like that we had not meddled in this at all.
So, why didn't this happen? Well, there were essentially two reasons. First, the world was able to dip into unusually well-stocked inventories. There was something like 8.4 billion barrels in global inventories at the start of the crisis, according to JP Morgan, well above the historical norm. And these were drawn down at an unprecedented rate to boost global supply, and thus keep down prices.
So the global stockpile of oil has been tapped into. That's what's keeping prices somewhat reasonable. But now we're all having to use our reserve oil, which is something you can only do for so long. That's a very uncomfortable feeling that we're tapping into these extra oil reserves, and that's not going to last forever.
Second, China, which is usually the world's biggest oil importer, suddenly cut its imports by about 4 million barrels per day, providing some much-needed relief to the global oil markets.
Okay.
Some of this seems to be because the Chinese economy is apparently very good at adapting to oil price shocks. Public electric vehicle charging jumped by 17% between April and May, for instance, suggesting that Chinese drivers were essentially switching to electric in response to higher gas prices.
That's actually pretty impressive. I wish that was even an option. In the United States, it's like we probably should be doing a better job of using electric vehicles, but it's definitely grown in popularity, but it's nowhere close to like this, where if oil prices go up, we can all just start using our electric cars more. Like that's just not a thing that's going to happen here.
But most of it was because China was drawing down its own massive stockpiles, which it's been building up for the past couple of years.
Wow. So it sounds like everyone is being forced to tap into their oil supply, their oil reserves. All because of this stupid thing that the United States is doing. I didn't realize how much this is affecting, like, this has been very bad for the US. Sounds like this has been very, very bad for a lot of other countries as well.
According to an analysis by Bloomberg, for instance, roughly half of the reduction in Chinese demand was as a result of China unloading its stockpiles. In short, the point we're trying to make is that the main reason that prices stayed relatively low and the world was able to avoid an acute oil price shock is because everyone was dipping into their stockpiles.
Wow.
However, this obviously can't go on forever, and by June, many stockpiles were running dangerously low. Trump actually admitted this publicly after Iran and the US signed their so-called Memorandum of Understanding. In an attempt to justify his decision to end the war, at the G7 summit, Trump claimed that oil reserves were going to run out in about 4 weeks.
See, there you go. Like at the G7 summit, he was talking about how we need to end the war with Iran to help everyone else. Like, oh, we're doing you such a big favor. And then at the I want to say the NATO summit, he was complaining that our NATO allies weren't doing enough to help us fight in Iran, which is that's not at all the purpose of NATO. The NATO alliance is not to help the US with our foreign wars that we're starting, but I know he was asking for that.
And then there would be Bedlam. Much to Trump's relief, news of the agreement immediately brought down oil prices, and they were back down to pre-war levels by July, although have ticked up since Tuesday's strikes. However, this does not mean that the oil market is as resilient as it was pre-war, because obviously stockpiles are a lot more depleted than they were going into the war.
Right.
Take a look at America's Strategic Petroleum Reserve, or SPR for instance, which is probably the world's single largest reserve and has played a key role in stabilizing oil markets in recent months.
Sure.
According to the latest EIA data, the total volume of oil in the SPR has fallen from about 415 million barrels before the war to 325 million barrels last week. Not only is this the emptiest the reserve has been since 1983, it also means that the US has continued to release oil from the SPR even after the ceasefire.
What a disaster. I just can't help but think about how this was something we decided to do to ourselves. There was no reason to do all this. What a disaster for the United States, and how much of our strategic oil, petroleum reserves that were used, like 25% down, the lowest it's been in 100 years. What are we doing?
Now, at this point, you might be thinking, 300 million barrels might not sound that bad. But
It sounds bad.
the key thing to understand here is that you can't totally deplete the SPR. The oil is stored in a series of vast underground salt caverns in Louisiana and Texas, and every time you take oil out, you risk dissolving the salt and collapsing the caverns. The SPR is already well past its shelf life. When it was set up after the 1973 Arab oil embargo, it was only designed with a 25-year lifespan for just 5 large drawdowns.
Yeah, even as an American, I did not know that. I've never heard that before. I think a lot of Americans don't know that.
We're already on 9. Furthermore, you need to have, at an absolute minimum, something like 160 million barrels in there at all times to maintain operational pressure. The point we're trying to make is that the SPR is already under strain and can't be totally depleted. Most other large oil reserves have similar limitations, which is why JP Morgan reckons that things start to get really difficult when global inventories drop below 6.8 billion barrels. It's also worth noting that
Scary. It feels like so far, like it's already felt pretty bad what this war with Iran is doing to gas and oil prices. It's already felt pretty rough. Apparently, we haven't even begun to see the real damage that this could cause. the more that this gets dragged out, the longer this war goes on, we could be headed for something catastrophic. Who knows what oil prices could go to if the oil reserves continue to get depleted? I didn't realize like what a ticking time bomb this situation is. This is like really concerning.
It's also worth noting that, as well as reclosing the Strait of Hormuz, Iran could further reduce global supply by closing the Bab al Mandab, another maritime strait between Djibouti and Yemen that connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden. The Bab al Mandab has become increasingly important to global oil markets in recent months, in large part because Saudi Arabia has reacted to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz by redirecting oil that would have previously been exported via ports on its eastern coast to ports on its western coast, where it can then be exported via the Red Sea and the Bab al Mandab.
I believe there's some like very, very, very recent news that the Bab al Mandab is like getting closed.
Exports through the Bab al Mandab have duly risen from about 3 million barrels a day before the war to more like 8 million today, or roughly 8% of global supply.
This is such a precarious and scary situation that the US has created. We can't rely on the Strait of Hormuz, so we're relying on this Bab el Mandab. We're running out of, trade corridors and shipping lanes for this oil. Like I didn't even I knew this was bad. I didn't know how bad, because I think in the United States we don't do a good job of communicating the reality of how bad things are. Probably because we caused it.
Iran could effectively shut the Bab al Mandab by either getting the Houthis, who control much of western Yemen and are widely considered an Iranian proxy, to harass passing ships, or just do it themselves, using longer range missiles and drones.
I believe that's starting to happen, actually.
This would take the total shortfall on global oil markets from 11 million barrels a day to more like 20 million barrels, forcing an even faster drawdown of any remaining stockpiles. This all means that, unless he's happy to risk not just higher prices but outright shortages, Trump can't afford to restart the war. This might...
Yeah, I mean, that's what you would think. That is what you would think. But we are in the war. We have restarted the war. The war is still on. You would think with all this info... I know Trump was desperate to end this at one point. Now it just seems like an ego, like his pride. He's continuing this because of pride, because he's annoyed and angry that he didn't get a deal, and he's supposed to be the master of deals, but he can't figure this out. You literally can't drag this on, or the entire world will suffer.
This might change in the future if global stockpiles recover, but this will take months, if not years. This is an...
Oh my god. Somehow, this is worse than I thought. And the war is very much still on, and it's getting harder and harder to see, because it keeps escalating. It will calm down, there's a ceasefire or a peace deal, and then it will escalate worse than before. So it's really getting hard to see how this is going to resolve. And we're literally running out of time, or we're going to see just how bad things get. Unbelievable. This, and by the way, seeing this like sort of outside perspective from this news source, TLDR News, very useful in very clearly, no BS, just communicating that what the United States is doing and what the stakes are and how bad things are. Which is good to be aware of, especially as an American, I feel like we're so unaware of what we are doing, as well as the rest of the world. So this was good, although it's good to be aware, but it's incredibly scary. So, but we should be more upset than we are. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like, or leave a comment with your thoughts on the U.S. war with Iran, how it's affecting oil, how it's affecting the world, what a crazy disaster this has been. That'd be good to hear about, especially if you're If you're outside of the US, hearing your outside perspective, that'd be really cool. And if you're interested in more videos like this, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.